Consider for a moment whether a piece of your memory opens up and it advertises Zachary's Pizza to you, whether you have a friend who says Zachary's and that's another piece of advertisement, whether you come to class and I say Zachary's Pizza, whether you're having a chat with your sister, whether you drive by Grand and you see Domino's and that reminds you of Zachary's Pizza, all these advertisements kind of create a sort of interest in you. And you look at your pocket, you have zero money, but you have a credit card, usually paid off by your father. And so you say, well, why don't I go to Zachary's Pizza? And through the creative arts, what we call imagination and fantasy, which all live in the future, you kind of picture yourself sitting at the Zachary's place, say on College, with Caesar salad. And so you wait for this pizza to come your way. And you kind of look to the table to the left, table to the right, just to see what they've ordered. And your mouth begins to water, and you can't wait for this pizza to come your way. You have meaning, you have purpose. You're not depressed, you have an agenda, which is really, really good. And you find your desire for pizza so relevant and meaningful that patience automatically is generated inside you. You wait and you wait and you wait, and the waitress comes to you and says, another 5 minutes. You say, oh yeah, that's fine. And you wait, and eventually the pizza comes your way. You have the first slice, it's great. The second slice is also great. The third slice, you're beginning to doubt if you should eat anymore. And then the fourth slice, you say, man, I knew I should have stopped at the second slice. And then you loosen your belt a little bit, kind of feel a little sick, and you tell the waitress to kindly box the pizza, and she does. And on your way out, you see a homeless person. You feel bad for you single-handedly having eaten 3/4 of the pizza. So you give him the box. And then you go home and your mom says, son, would you like to go to Zachary's Pizza? You say, Mom, the next time you say Zachary's, I'm just going to shit my pants. Nihilism, something that used to give you so much meaning, so much purpose, because you were exposed to it a bit too much. It lost its meaning. It's kind of like relationships. Nihilism can happen in two ways. Sometimes the moment you're born, the moment you come out of your mom, you're wired to be negative, you're wired to be dark, you're wired to be gloomy. No different than Vincent van Gogh, for example. No different than Khalil Gibran, no different than Jesus Christ. I mean, this guy has zero experience in life. At the age of 12, he says, you know what, I don't find anything meaningful. He leaves. His form of nihilism is very different than Moses. Moses begins to understand. So you have a kind of nihilism that is the outcome of life experiences and your ability to process them really, really well. And the other is just temperamental. You don't want to follow anyone, and you don't want to listen to anyone. You don't want to read books by anyone who has written about the darkness and gloominess of life because of their temperaments. That's no good. Consider the following. So remember, when your mom tells you, let's go have Zachary's, you say no. And there's a good reason you say no. You don't want Zachary's. You hate Zachary's. And you don't even want to think about pizza. Why? You just had it. There is a book, it's really, really good to read, maybe 50, 60 times, if you have the time and the patience for it. It's a book that was written by this guy named Hermann Hesse. It's a very difficult time for him. His wife was a little crazy. He had 3 kids, but he couldn't really find love or bond with them. The book is called Siddhartha. One of the nice things about the book is that there's a guy who has everything in life. And there comes a point where something about him says it's not enough. But when he says, my ordinary life is not enough, there is something else that he's looking for. He's looking for Atman, he's looking for himself, he's looking for God, he's looking for enlightenment. And so he goes on this quest with one of his best friends, whose name is Govinda. They both want to become monks, they both want to live in the forest, and they run into the Buddha. But Siddhartha is a very strange fellow in the sense that he's lost hope in words. He's lost hope in teachings. He doesn't want to read anymore. He doesn't want to go to workshops anymore because he knows that what he's looking for has to come from his inside. It's like someone says, where can I go and find love? Well, someone like Anthony Robbins or some loser will tell you, well, if you go to this place, that bar over there, or a church over there, you'll look at someone, you fall in love with them. A more difficult path is, listen, you can't truly love anyone unless you've got some self-knowledge. You've come to understand certain things about yourself. The dark parts, the good parts, the bad parts, the parts that are Hitler inside you, the parts that are Jesus Christ inside you. You just need to get to know them. And so when the Buddha says, come follow me, Siddhartha says, no, your wisdom may be good for you, but it can't be good for me. I seek wisdom that comes from within. And the Buddha looks at him and says, "You're a very cunning young man. Okay, fine. Go your way. Do what you need to do." He comes to a point where he grows really, really exhausted because he keeps sitting and meditating and fasting and praying, but no doors open. It's like heaven remains shut for him. And he gives up. And he runs into a woman whose name is Kamala. And Kama in Sanskrit means someone who gives you pleasure. But this is not like an American kind of pleasure when you go to a brothel and you have sex with someone. This is a woman who is gifted and has the skills through her lips, through her touch, through the way you touch her or allows you to touch her. She gets you very, very close to this thing called beauty, to this thing called love. But one of the things this woman tells her is that you will never be able to love me. You have lost that ability. You just don't know how to love. You live in a very detached way. And you could say that he's a tiny little man who's experienced trauma. But not trauma because his father did A, B, C, D, not trauma because his grandfather did E, F, G, H, not trauma because his wife left him. No, none of those things. Trauma because he looked at life. He came to realize he's just unhappy. That's a traumatic experience. It's like you look at your companion and you don't feel anything. And you want to feel something, but it just doesn't come about. And you try to fake it with a cruise, with a this, with a that, but something about you says, there was passion, but there is none left. Him and Kamala have sex, and he finds himself in the presence of God every time they do. He makes money, and he buys fine clothes, and he goes to fancy restaurants, and he has great conversations. Not often, but once in a while. Then he becomes saturated. He doesn't want to have sex anymore. He doesn't want to be around Kamala anymore. He doesn't like to wear fine clothes anymore. All of a sudden, he goes back to the person he's always been, discontent and unhappy. And then he goes to the city, and he finds himself what he calls child people, grown people like me, but they speak like little children. Their pursuits are what little kids pursue. You take your kid to Target and he wants a $10 toy, a car. As an adult, well, you buy a Benz. It's the same thing. And a car is supposed to just get you from point A to point B, right? But something really interesting happens to him. He says, I had a great father, but that didn't do anything for me. I had a great life, that didn't do anything for me. I went into the monastery, let's just say. I fasted, I prayed. Those didn't do anything for me. I even saw the Buddha. He didn't do anything for me. I saw the most beautiful woman on this planet, Kamala. She didn't do anything for me. I had great food, Thai food, Chinese food, Zachary's pizza. In the end, I find myself disgusted by all of them. And what you have in his form of nihilism is that I've knocked on so many doors, and all those doors opened, and I walked through them. And I was exposed to all the things that those rooms had to offer. And I ate, whether it's physical food, emotional food, intellectual food, spiritual food. I'm disgusted by them all. And that is a good place to be in life. It's very sad because by the time you get there, life no longer has anything to offer you. And it's a devastating place. See someone like Friedrich Nietzsche who comes forth and says God is dead, and he broadcasts this to an audience for whom God has had meaning for all these years, thousands of years. When you say God is dead, when you take your companion to the church and you look to the heavens and you say only death do us part, and death is in the hands of God, so our marriage will be annulled the moment God says you've lived enough, it's time to come back home. When politics revolves around God, when your human mannerism revolves around God, when God is dead, there is no meaning to life anymore. But here's the problem with Friedrich Nietzsche. He didn't have any relationships. He doesn't know how to walk away from the world, being attached, to love your son, to love your husband, to love your mother. He had zero of them. Friedrich Nietzsche was temperamentally gloomy. He's a great poet. I mean, read Thus Spoke Zarathustra. It'll inspire you. But it's spoken by a man who has no real life experience. You could say he sits back, he looks at the rest of us, and he writes a novel about us, how pathetic we are. But why don't you go live that pathetic life? See the sort of emotions that pathetic life creates. Fall in love, and then walk away. And it's something that Plato warned us about. People like Friedrich Nietzsche. He's an artist, but he creates illusions. But they are so wonderful, so beautiful, you'll follow them. But they'll take you nowhere in the end.